Krunk Crew. Krunk Crew. What it do? It's me, your fan, your man, Kyle Krunk, host of the Krunk Crew Podcast. Here we are, episode 6 of the Krunk Crew Podcast. We're recording this episode on December 30th. December 30th is the date. I don't have the headphones on right now, so this is a little weird. I like the noise cancellation that I get from that, but I wanted you guys to see my sexy haircut if you're watching the YouTube video. So, what's up? It's the last podcast of the year. Actually, the last podcast of the decade. We're about to start the 2020s. The 2010s are coming to an end. I hope they had a awesome impact on your life, and that's how we're going to get into this podcast, is going straight into that topic. The 2010s, think about, I mean, you can think about any amount of time this way, whether it be the minute, the hour, the day, the year, the decade. It doesn't have to be 2020 be the beginning of a new technical decade, but I mean, it's going to be 2020, so just play with me here, play along with me. Excuse me. We're coming to the start of a new decade. Think of what the last 10 years have meant to you in your life. Think about what has changed in your life over the last 10 years. If you're like me and you're in your late 20s, maybe you're in your mid 20s, early 20s, this is the perfect time to be thinking about this, because the last 10 years is almost guaranteed to have been filled with a lot of life-changing experiences. If I think about my last 10 years, 2010 was the year I was preparing I knew I was joining the Marine Corps, so I had to get ready. I went to boot camp very early 2011, so 2010 was kind of just like that prep phase, mentally, physically, all that. And the first 4 years of the decade, first 5 pretty much, all spent in the Marine Corps, doing Marine Corps things. So half of the decade was spent in the Marine Corps, and then the second half was the decade of me transitioning back into normal life. I had gotten married during the Marine Corps. I came home. There's a lot of things to get used to and a lot of things to adjust, and it's been a very up and down decade for me. A lot of ups and a lot of downs. Probably some of the biggest lows in my life have happened in the past 10 years, but also some of the biggest highs. And I think about all my life has changed since 2010. And I think about how my life is going to change in 10 years when it's 2030, and I'm looking back again. So I'm excited for the future. I want to make every day as good as possible. And you don't need it to be a new decade for you to want this, for this to be triggered in you. But I mean, we're people, we're humans, we're sentimental. Maybe that's part of it. Maybe it's just that we like to put more meaning and stuff onto certain milestones. So maybe that's what I'm doing. But yeah, it's crazy. I mean, really, like I said, just stop and think for a second. The last 10 years of your life, everything that has changed and all the potential. Think about that's how I want you to look at it. Think about all the potential that you have for the next 10 years. And it's all unfulfilled, and it's all up to you to drive towards that potential. Set goals for yourself. Yearly, daily, hourly, whatever. I mean, I'm going to try to be better at that myself. But set goals for yourself. And hopefully the next 10 years is the best of your life, because that's what I'm going to try to do with mine. Make it the best of my life. Because there's no going back in time. There's nothing I can do about changing the past. All I can do is make the future better, and I don't want to be in the future looking back saying, man, I wish I would have done something better with my young age. Now I'm old and it's not even possible. You know? Keep that kind of stuff in mind. And you only get one life. Let's make it a fucking kick-ass one. So that's what I plan on doing, and I think that was a fun little way to start the podcast. So this podcast, I'm going to introduce something that we're going to be doing in future podcast. I'm not sure if we're going to do it every week. Maybe we'll do it every other week. Maybe we'll do it the last Sunday, because I don't know how long these are going to be. So I'm going to preface it with that, but a couple things before we get into this story time. One, a lot of these stories are going to be talking about very real, very serious things that have happened in life. At any point, I'm not asking for your pity, for you to feel bad for me. I'm just going to talk about it and be open and honest about everything that's happened. I might leave out names or change names or do something like that to protect identities for the people that are involved. But for the most part, just take it for what it's worth. I don't need you to later be like, oh, hey, I'm sorry for you, because especially on this first one, we're going to be talking about a buddy of mine that's no longer with us. So just keep that in mind. But let's get into it. So this story is going to be like a two-parter. I'm going to tell you about the lives of two people. First, starting off with one person and how he affected my life, and then something that recently happened that the other person, and it's all tied together. You'll get it. If you're not on the YouTube version of this podcast, you're not gonna be able to see this, but I'm gonna describe it as I show the camera. The guy I'm gonna be talking about is the guy that is represented in this tattoo right here on my inner left bicep. You can see it's the outline of the shape of Kentucky, because he also lived in Kentucky. He lived down about here yonder, and I live about up here. And those are his initials. His name was, for the people listening, it's the outline of Kentucky, and it says rest in peace, or RIP, and it says KLW for Kyle Lawrence Westfall. And next to the K, there's a little exponent of 1. So we're going to get into the story. And this is kind of like I said, the past 10 years, right? So this is 2000, early 2012, late 2011. I joined my first unit in the Marine Corps, which was 2nd Battalion 8th Marines in Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. And I reported in, and I was in the communications platoon, and you go there, and the first week or two is kind of deer in headlights. You report in, you kind of are just every single face you see everywhere is new. You don't know who's who belongs where. So you get about a month or so of getting used to the guys that you're around every day. Well, I'd say about a month in, I met this gentleman named Kyle. His name was I met him. His name was Westfall. He was a PFC, or I'm not sure the rank at the time, but he was fairly new to the unit as well. And unlike other people, when you join the Marine Corps, a big thing about the Marine Corps is seniority. It's kind of, think of it like high school. The seniors are always going to want to haze the freshmen because they've put their time in. So the guys that have deployed, for me, they had just got back from a deployment not too long ago, and I was joining the unit. So all these guys were super salt dogs. They were all high and mighty because they were, coming off a deployment. Some of them first, whatever, second, third, however many deployments they've been on. But it's just another one under their belt, and now they got a fresh new guy, a boot, as we call them in the Marine Corps. They have a boot that joined the unit who's never done anything, and when there's shit work to do, there's shit work to do. Westfall was another boot, but he had been there a little bit longer than me, so he had gotten a little bit. Now he's not the freshest boot. Now he's not the freshest meat, so he's a little bit more under the wing, if you will. If there's a canopy of the wing and you got to get under the wing of somebody else and get under their wing and be protected by a little bit from the hazing from that wingage, then yeah, you're going to get that. And as new people get in, it pushes the people that have been here a little bit longer, a little bit further under that wing, and there's that protection. So he was already accepted a little bit more by the other Marines. He was a technician Marine, so he was in my platoon. We're in the communications platoon. We have separate squads. You have the field techs, the technician squads. They had radio techs, data techs, and just general techs in that squad. Then you had radio. They were the biggest squad of the platoon. Then you had wire Marines. They were the smallest. Then you had data, which is what I was in, and he was a tech. So, um, he never treated me like a boot because I guess he understood that he was too. But he never, even though he could have and got away with it, he never like talked down to me or anything like that. And was always a super nice guy and helpful, and never treated me like shit, which was a big deal to me. Made a big impact. He was a little bit younger than me, and after that initial meeting, we find out that we're both from Kentucky. We're both named Kyle. It's like, there's a friendship that's made. And they used to always call him outside of work. We like to call each other, the people that became friends like to call each other by our first names because all we ever call each other is our last name. So a lot of times, I don't know. In the Marine Corps, it's a term of endearment to know and call somebody by their first name because even out of work, even your friends will call you your last name all the time. So, uh, since we have two Kyles in our little group of friends, they would always call him Kyle 1 and me Kyle 2. And it was always this funny joke going on because I'd be like, screw you guys. I'm older. I was born first. I'm literally on this earth first. I'm Kyle 1. He is Kyle 2. And they'd be like, no, 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 no. But he was here first. He was in 2-8 first. He got here before you. You're a boot. You're Kyle 2. He was here first. He's Kyle 1. You can't be first. But I was born first, so I am chronologically in the grand scheme of things. So it was this fun little, back and forth. Eventually, a radio guy had joined. His name was Kyle. We called him Kyle 3. So there, we had all this. It was this funny little inside joke. We would hang out. We played soccer on our free time at some of the open fields, and we would always talk about what we missed about home. Because if you're from Kentucky, there's a lot of beautiful land around, and there's this and that. So, yeah, the rest in peace on my arm tattoo is because he had committed suicide. So that's why I said at the beginning of the story, I don't want you to, say sorry for me or anything like that, feel bad for me. It's been a while. It's been since about 2013 or late 2012 since it happened, and nothing we can do but try to keep his memory alive. And that's what I do is I carry him with me all the time in his memory, and I try to remember his face as much as I can. And yeah, his memory lives on. So that's all I can do. I don't want anybody's pity or any of that, but yeah, so the story time, we're gonna dive forward a little bit towards some of the things that led up to his suicide. Which now you can understand the exponent because when he died, I gave him Kyle 1. Never an argument again. That's why it's KLW with the 1 exponent, because he's Kyle 1, I'm Kyle 2. But some of the things that led up to when he killed himself. This is part of the crazy story time. We were cleaning out the radio shop. They were. The techs were helping the radio guys clean out the shop because they were all going to reorganize it. It's like a big warehouse, kind of. Well, not that big, but like a decent warehouse-sized shop that they were cleaning out, and they were going to switch things around or whatever. And I guess they found this tin foil package. It was all crumpled up, and nobody could tell what it was. It had a little bit of weight, so like something's in the foil, but it's all wrapped in foil. And like they have to decide if they're getting rid of shit or whatever. And Kyle, being the ambitious young lad that he was, jokingly grabbed whatever the foil was and opened it up and took a big sniff of it to try to figure out what it was. Well, it turns out it was a vented lithium battery for a radio. And when he opened up the foil and took a big sniff, he pretty much got a big hit sniff of airborne lithium, and it caused him to actually have a stroke and paralyze the left side of his face. He went to the hospital, and you know, one of the things, like a month before he had killed himself, he had just gotten a gold weight surgically put into his eyelid, so he had the ability to blink again on his left side. But he was struggling. That was one of the things he was struggling through up before his death, was the fact that he was 20 years old, and now he had part of his face paralyzed from imagine being at work and just work's like, hey, we're cleaning the house, and you're just checking things under your desk, and then you find a package, and just not thinking anything of it, you sniff it, it's aluminum foil. And pretty much that's something as simple as that, and it caused him to have a stroke. And that was one of the struggles he faced towards the end of his life, on top of him and his wife were already talking about divorce, and they were getting divorced. And he had 2 kids with her. So here's where the other guy comes in the story. After Kyle is buried, gone, he's not with us anymore. We find out not very long after that somebody that we know, we're gonna call him Will, from the same platoon, from the same squad as Kyle, is now seeing and dating Kyle's wife, ex-wife, I guess, or whatever you want to call her at this point. They're dating each other, and he's like kind of around Kyle's kids. Now this Will guy was a strange fellow. He had been our friend for a while. In the platoon, he was one of the new guys that came around the same time as a lot of the people that was in like our friend group or whatever. And we always knew something was kind of off with him, though, because, for example, one of our other friends who was married, his wife's sister came into town, and Will and this guy were like best friends in their squad. And when his wife's sister came into town, Will and this guy's sister-in-law, I guess, hooked up, kissed or something, something happened, maybe even sex, I'm not sure, but to the point where I guess he got very attached to her, kind of like, now that we're at this point, like, I really like you, I want to marry you, blah blah blah. And we had heard stories of like him locking himself into the bathroom and choking himself and saying he was going to kill himself if she left without him or didn't want to be with him. Like, super possessive, weird things when they had just kind of met each other, and not really like, they're not at that stage yet, but he was kind of like trying to force it on, super like, so we had already knew some like weird shit had happened with him, in that maybe he had some demons in the closet, right? And now he's dating apologize, I vaped. If you're an audio listener, you're gonna have to deal with that sometimes. Nicotine, this story's crazy. Getting to get crazier. So now he's dating Kyle's wife, who actually eventually gets married to and has a kid with. And then they eventually get divorced, but he still has a kid with her. They lived off the money that she got when Kyle killed himself. If you don't know this, every military member has a life insurance policy on them. I can just speak from my experience. I know ours were like $500,000. If I died for any reason, accidental or otherwise, as long as it wasn't like I'm planning to give the money, I don't know, as long as it wasn't me trying to do some sort of weird scam fraud thing, it's $500,000 to whoever I elect to be the benefactor. So Will is now married and dating Kyle's wife, dating, married, whichever portion of the stage you're in, and they're living off this $500,000 that they got from his suicide. On top of that, Will's best friend, who he had been weird with his best friend's sister-in-law. Will's best friend is the one that walked in and found Kyle when he had killed himself because he didn't show up to work. Pretty much the way that happened was I had went on leave back to Kentucky. I just played, it was on a Friday, I played soccer with Kyle, and I said, I'm going on leave on the Saturday. We're driving home. I'll take pictures of home for you. I know you miss it. We're going to have to hang out sometime when we get there, just the usual stuff. Then I go to leave. On leave, it's like a 12, 16-hour drive, so that's all of Saturday, and then I sleep into Sunday. I'm sleeping most of Sunday, and then I wake up Monday. I guess he didn't show up for work Monday. And the staff sergeant of his squad, of this platoon, went with Will's best friend, and they had found that he had shot himself and killed himself in his apartment. Fast forward, like I said, Will starts dating Kyle's wife, ex-wife, whatever. They're living off the money that they got from that suicide. I find out from a call this whole thing when I'm on leave. Sucks. First time I ever wore my dress blues in the Marine Corps was to his funeral. But fast forward. Now Will is divorced from Kyle's wife that he has a kid with. And I don't know if he's still in the Marine Corps, if he's just visiting a friend in the Marine Corps. I don't know how it works, but he decides he wants to do a little traveling, and he travels somewhere to Cali to visit somebody else from our platoon in the Marine Corps. And while he's there, there's these two female Marines also there, and I guess he has sex with one of them. He wants to have sex with the other one too, so he tries to get pushy with it, and like the way he was with his old best friend's sister-in-law, kind of creepy shit happens. He starts getting pushy. She calls her boyfriend over. I guess he's in that creepy I'm gonna kill myself stage where he gets when he gets around having sex with women. I don't know all the details, but the girl that didn't want to have sex with him calls her boyfriend, who's another Marine, and they come over and they have a scuffle in the front yard, and he stabs him in the stomach with a knife. I don't know how many times. All I know is that that Marine didn't survive. So we have this guy named Will, who is not only dated and married somebody who used to be in his own squad's wife that killed himself. We don't know how much Kyle knew about their relationship before he had killed himself. Something that we always kind of questioned. This guy then continues on to have a child with her and then divorce her, and then, fast forward a couple years, visiting an old friend, and gets into this situation, and he murders another Marine. And it's just crazy. He just recently, that happened like a year or two ago. He just recently finally got convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced. And that is why that is part of our first story time, because that's a fucking crazy story. This guy that used to be a friend, used to be in my squad, or not my squad, but my platoon, murdered somebody and got convicted, and is just, I guess, an all-around piece of shit fucking person. How about that for story time number 1, huh, guys? It's gonna be hard to beat that. That's yeah, that's all things that have occurred in the past 10 years. So like I said, bad things are gonna happen, they're inevitable, but let's push forward and try to make these next 10 years awesome. I don't know, I wanted to talk about that with you guys. Something I didn't really ever talk very much about, and it explains one of the tattoos on my arm. I don't know if you guys have any plans, though. Moving on to a more bright subject after that enticing story time. I don't know if you guys have any plans for New Year's, but Happy New Year's to you. I hope 2019 was awesome. I hope it was a great decade. I hope it was a great year. I hope this next year and next decade are both awesome for you. Tell me down in the comments below if you are listening to this before or after the new year, what plans you have or had and how they went. I hope they're awesome. Let's all type an F in the comments below or in the chat for Ninja. About this time last year, he tried to do the floss in New York to a lot of people in the rain who did not do anything. And kudos on him for leaning into that, because that was an atrocious moment. And I feel very bad for him. Imagine how embarrassed he felt. Holy. So I hope you're going to be having a great new year. Can't believe we got 6 episodes of this podcast recorded in this year. One a week. So by the end of this next year, we should be on episode 58. 52 weeks in a year, 1 episode a week. This is the last one for this year. That means 52 next year. So you're OGs if you listen to any of these first 6 episodes. We'll see how many people are watching these or listening to these once we get to episode 58 at the end of the year. It'll be exciting. I do enjoy doing these. I do enjoy hanging out with you guys. I enjoy getting the idea for things I want to discuss on the podcast from just chatting with you guys in stream and then realizing, hey, I want to talk about that. So that's kind of what we're doing is we're just enjoying ourselves. We're chatting, hanging out. One of the things that, we talked about on stream that I realized I want to talk about, which weren't, politics, religion stuff, not a lot of people like to talk about very much, but I do want to give you guys my take. I want you guys to understand me as well as you can, so you know where I sit on things, and, maybe, if you want to, fucks with me, be my friend, be somebody that I know. Or maybe, I'll say something and you'll be like, hey, I don't agree with you and I don't want to be around you anymore. But either way, I want the right people here for the right reasons. I don't want anybody to ever be or feel like they have had shade pulled over their eyes in any reason or fashion to believe I am somebody I'm not. So that's why I'm always very honest. But I'll give you guys my take on religion and why I have that. I myself am agnostic. Otherwise known, let me Google it. I think it's known as deitist or deityism. Agnostic. Let me make sure. Okay. I thought there was something like called deityism or something. It's also known, but I'll read the definition for agnostic for you. A person who believes that nothing is known or can be known of the existence or nature of God or anything beyond material phenomena. A person who claims neither faith nor disbelief in God. Pretty much what that says is, the way I interpret it and the way I understand it is, I believe that there is maybe a higher power. I don't like to put a name on it. I don't like to call it God. I don't like to call it fate. I don't like to call it destiny. There's something else out there that's, we're not the end all be all of the universe or the galaxy of existence. There's something else out there that maybe it's all predestined, but whatever it is, I'm not going to put a name on it because I don't know for sure 100% proof. The reason I am this way, I grew up in a very Catholic household. We had to go after you got baptized and all that stuff. First communion and all that. We had these classes even when I was in 4th grade called CCD. That's Charlie Delta classes. CCD, where it was pretty much on Wednesday night after school. I had to go to school at church at like 6 or 7 at night until like 8 at night. And then I got church homework on top of my regular school homework. It was just a super bad experience. What I experience all the time, was seeing the collection plates go around. And then you had all the other reasons I didn't like the religion, the classes and all that stuff that they had behind it. And then once I got older and I had the choice for myself, I went with my neighbors who we'll talk about here in a little bit. I went with my neighbors who went to a Baptist church, and so that's Christian. And I liked that actually for a while. That's the farthest I got into religion where I was believing in it and just really faithful, I guess. But then something else I saw where these people who wouldn't show up for the longest time would show up around, springtime of the year, summertime of the year when the church was going to plan a retreat or a trip, wherever it may be, to Florida or somewhere cool. And these people that you hadn't seen in so long would show up out of nowhere, money in hand, ready to go on these trips, and they would get treated just as good as you, who has been showing up every Wednesday, providing participation in discussions, truly investing in this. And these guys are being treated just like, which I guess should be part of the way, Christian way. The nice way is treat everybody good, but I still feel like there was that on top of, you would hear whoever had, you'd be at church on Sunday and you'd be like, oh, in this family, they're such good Christians, or they're such good Catholics. They have done this huge donation to us. And it was like people would get highlighted as, oh, that's what's making them a good Christian, is that they've donated to you money. So like this money thing that got involved in it all, to me, just made me not like the idea of organized religion in general. I believe all organized religion is organized in the hopes to get money. Otherwise it wouldn't be organized, or otherwise they wouldn't be trying to get tax breaks, whatever the case may be. So that pushed me a lot towards, you know what, there might be a God. There might be. There might not be, but I think there's something bigger than us. So that's why I'm agnostic. I believe there is a higher power, maybe, but I don't have the proof of it. I'm not going to neither say I do or don't 100% think so, So that's where I stand on that. I think it's a pretty practical stance. And from what I've heard, just randomly through videos, I believe, there's a very big rise in people that are agnostic in the world these days. So, or even atheist, So, I don't know. Maybe it tells you that the world is shifting towards a different idealization, or maybe technology is just making us believe that, with everybody's ideas out there, you can believe that. There's a theory I heard, what if Jesus was just a normal man without all these crazy things, and they had to add all these crazy stories to make it believable or to make it stick out, because if he was just a normal man, nobody would listen. If he was just a carpenter, nobody would give a shit what he was preaching. I don't know. Like I said, politics and religion seem to bring out a bad side in some people. I don't ever want to have an argument about it. I just want to be able to talk and say that that's how I feel, which is something that we talked about this week as well. If you guys remember in the 90s at all, if you are old enough to have decent memories from the 90s and early 2000s were a crazy time. There was a lot more, like, the idea of agreeing to disagree was so much more practical. People didn't all feel the need to share their opinions at all times about every subject, especially when it was a negative opinion or what they would maybe consider criticism from their viewpoint. But then even when it did happen, people would be able to be like, all right, like, that's how you feel, cool, but let's just go about our way. That's not how I feel. And people could agree to disagree and still move about their day. That just doesn't seem like a possibility anymore. It feels like people will tell you what their opinion is, and if you do not match that, you are now the enemy. You are the enemy, and the only way you will not be the enemy is if I can convince you otherwise from your stance of disagreeing with me. And it's just super insane to me to think that, like, we came from such a awesome place where it wasn't that way. It wasn't like, agree with me or die. I'm going to die on this hill, and I'm going to fight and die on this hill. And this is my opinion, and I will die for it. And a lot of times people are just like, we're in a time now where people virtue signal, and just so insane. People want you to know at all times what their opinion is, what their virtues are. And if you don't agree with it, you're the enemy, and I just think that's shitty. I think we need to go back to a better time where we were able to be like, hey, you voted for this person, I voted for this person, cool. We've been friends for a while, it doesn't need to change now because of that. Like, let's just not talk about it. We agree to disagree. Let's focus on the things that made us friends in the first place. You have people now that are family members that'll be like, oh, you voted for Trump? I'm not going to ever talk to you again. And that's insane to me. That's just so insane to me that people are willing to stand in these tribal or virtue or whatever groups you want to call them, and they're willing to shun everybody that is not involved in that group out. And the only reason that they're in this group is, like I was saying before, the invention of technology has allowed all these groups to form so easily, so quickly, so effortlessly for these people to get together. And it's making the world a worse place. It really is, in my opinion. I think we need to get back to a more loving and accepting mindset towards one another. I think the agree to disagree thing should be the default, unless somebody, like, I have friends in the Marine Corps who didn't believe in gay marriage, who literally thought being gay was a phase. I'm not gay, but I have some very close people in my life, friends, who are, and I've had people that have lived in the same household that are family, that are, and because the two women love each other, he would try to argue with me that it's just a phase and that they weren't, and just we've all heard that argument before. And when you're arguing with someone that tries to tell you they weren't born that way, and you have somebody that you've actually sat down and talked to, and you know that just like that's how they're born, do you think that they would want to go through all this? Like, the people I'm talking about now, specifically, one of them is married with an adopted daughter. Her and her wife have a daughter. Actually, not even adopted, excuse me. However it was set up is they had someone's sperm put in one of the two ladies' um downstairs mix up to cause impregnation. And she had one of the two females in the couple had a natural baby from somebody else's. So to tell me that people would go through all the hate and all that stuff because it's a fate, this person is still a close friend of mine, but they literally, for me and that person, we just don't need to ever discuss or focus on that. The discussion doesn't need to go there. He can believe what he wants to believe. I don't need to talk to him about that. I believe what I believe. Me and him are still good friends. I think it's very ignorant of him, and if we did have that discussion at a prolonged period, we'd probably get at odds with each other. But at the time in the Marine Corps, when we were in our early 20s, and especially now in my late 20s, I'm adult enough to be able to be like, hey, we can still be friends. Just because you believe something that I think is the fucking dumbest thing in the world doesn't mean I can't be friends with you. I'm sure I believe things that are dumb too to a lot of people. And I just think that's a great example of what people should be trying to do for each other and towards each other to create a more loving environment. So I'll briefly, like I was saying, I've talked about these guys last podcast. I'll tell you a little bit more about them in this podcast. I talked about them in the context where I grew up next door neighbor to twins, my next door neighbors. I was talking about it when I talked about how sometimes people can gang up on you, and it feels kind of shitty to have that feeling of that where you and one person are cool, and then all of a sudden another person jumps in, and then now it's those two versus you, and it's this weird dynamic. Well, that happened a lot with these twins, but that's not what I'm talking about now. I mentioned them again in this podcast, so I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit more. I grew up next door to twins, Justin and Jordan. They for 9 years I lived next door to these guys. They're my best friends. One or the other were my best friends for most of those 9 years. And it's actually insane to think of like the bond that twins have. It was very interesting to grow up next door to twins. Uh, these two were at odds. It's almost like a forever ending sense of competition, but at the same time a forever bond. Like they're forever each other's best friend, but they're also forever competing with each other at the same exact time. And their parents tried to give them the same things for Christmas and stuff like that, so it wasn't this feeling of unequality. But it was just very crazy to see how they went throughout their lives and to see these guys grow up. And then even when I moved away, still know them in high school, and to see you know these two guys grow up. And yeah, very interesting. I don't know if you know any twins in your life. I've known a lot. um but that's something that's crazy to think about, that bond. I think that's a bond that us people that are not twins will never understand. It's a bond that transcends. Maybe people that are like truly deeply in love will get hints of that bond. If you've ever been truly deeply in a really good relationship with someone, where you kind of like finish each other's sentences, or just like look, there's things where you have that super deep moment of connection, when you're just looking at each other, or something happens and you're just like, wow, wow, we're two peas in a pod. If you ever have that moment in a relationship with somebody, I feel like maybe being a twin is like having that at all times with another person. Maybe, obviously not like in a spousal marriage or relationship, where it's like you look at them and you think, oh, they're beautiful, I love them, and then you say something that probably adds into it for that dynamic. But that kind of, if you get what I'm talking about, if you know what I'm talking about, but that moment of connection where you're like, wow, I'm connected, I'm truly connected to this person. I can almost feel like maybe being a twin's like that. You're just always truly connected to that other person. And that's that's crazy to think about. Yeah, I don't know. I have a lot of memories and stories with those guys. We did a lot of hood rat things when we were kids. It was we actually kind of played God in a weird sense. My dog DJ, who I had for 14 years, his mom was my next door neighbor's dog, Socks. Um, their dog, Socks, we actually got because there was this pond that was frozen in the neighborhood, and one winter when it was frozen, we walked across and there was a litter of puppies on the other side. And they convinced their parents to get one. They talked to the people there and they got one. They got a little husky looking puppy. They named her Socks because the bottoms of her paws all were white down, so it looked like she was wearing socks. I called her the neighborhood police dog because this is the only time I've ever seen a dog like this. And this is also just, again, reminiscent of the times. This was a time when you were kids and you'd run around the neighborhoods, unattended kids, young, all the time. And even Socks was, I've never seen another dog raised this way. For the most part, she was allowed free roam of pretty much the whole neighborhood whenever she wants. She never like really left the neighborhood that we can really know or tell, but she'd always show back up, and she was like the neighborhood police dog. You'd be like randomly playing basketball one day and you'd see Socks dart by in the woods, and like, what the fuck? What is she doing? She's doing funny things. But when Socks was like a year old, we took her of all places, we took her behind the church parking lot. Behind the church, they had this like concrete flat, I guess not really deck, but it was like a basement floor kind of behind the church. And we took her down there, and this neighborhood dog, Toby, was there because he had tried to, I guess, do some stuff to her once or twice on walks before. So we knew he was interested, and we kind of let them get at it. We were very young kids, maybe 10 or 11 at the time, didn't really better. And, from that, she had a litter of puppies, and then one of those puppies was a dog that I had had for 14 years named DJ, who I loved very much, and one of the best dogs I ever have come in contact with. But yeah, that's why Yeah, we played a little bit. We played God a little bit there. We were like, DJ, I would always look at him and be like, you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for me. You wouldn't exist. I helped create you. But yeah, that's a funny little story about them and those guys. So I don't know. I thought I'd tell you guys. But yeah, that that's another dynamic. I don't know what I'm even saying anymore at this point. I guess it's time to cut it. It's 1:26 a.m. on December 30th. We have one day left in the year. Like I was saying before, thank you guys so much for being a part of this podcast in its earliest stages. OGs, truly. I love you guys. I appreciate you guys all. Jeremy driving 2 hours out to my house today to push a reset switch. Thank you. Zoe, Nick, Blakey, Alex, all you guys who give me the positive feedback about the podcast all the time. Mizuki, it means a lot to me to know that you guys are out there listening. And hopefully one day when I'm more famous than Joe Rogan's podcast, you guys will remember here the start with me. I hope this past 10 years has been awesome for you. Hope this past year has been awesome for you, getting to know all of you guys and hopefully getting to know more about you and meet more and become more successful, all of us together in the following years as our friendships and relationships develop. I love you guys. I appreciate everything you do to keep me going forward in this journey. And I hope you have a great day, a great night, a great whatever it is when you're listening to this. And I'll catch you guys on the next one. Like, subscribe, go follow my Twitch, twitch.tv/Kyle Krunk.